This show is clean, pretty much.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 662. Hello, it's Mike Matthews broadcasting from the last place on earth located somewhere in Podcastro Valley, California. Today, Madame Rootabega, Valentino, Bison Bentley, plus the finale of my Into an interview with singer-songwriter and interesting intellectual Ed Roman. And Adele, your album 21 is being threatened. We'll find out by whom.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Or was it who? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I should have ever left the womb.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Because it's a crazy world, isn't it? It's crazy, it's scary, but it's also rather fascinating. Like yesterday, there was something that was not so irritating because we drank a little bit of root beer that the brewmaster made, and it was Errata root beer, not Slade, the group from England. What?
Mike's Daily Podcast.
The group from England, Slade. Long, far, far away, and that Merry Christmas song.
Mike's
I think I've gone off subject.
Daily
So we had Errata root beer,
Podcast.
which is root beer that points out your mistakes, and then we confused it for erotic root beer. It was a great show. Listen to it tomorrow from yesterday. Something. Now, this show makes a lot of sense. Just wanted to make that statement. I went on OkCupid yesterday, and I use Firefox, and all of a sudden OkCupid told me, hey, idiot, well, it didn't call me that, but it might as well have. It said, hey, you know what? You're using Mozilla Firefox, and the new CEO guy is a person that hates gays, and you really shouldn't in any way help them out by using Firefox. It said something to the effect that OkCupid has a lot of gay clientele on it, and that nobody should hate gays, which I agree with. And apparently the new CEO contributed $1,000 to Proposition 8. Now, or Proposition Hate is what we should call it from now on. But you know what? I have Google Chrome on my computer, so when I go and use OkCupid, I'm going to open up Google Chrome. There's just some things about Google Chrome I don't like, and I like Firefox better for. I do wish, though, that Firefox was as gay as Google Chrome, and then everybody would be happy. And then, you know what? Chrome is great, and I have no problems if you're a Chromosexual. So that was a bad joke. Then there was all this news about Obama's enrollment numbers, Obamacare, getting over 7 million. It's like 7.1 million. And how Fox News is all on a tirade and angry and saying that, well, people were forced to enroll. So you can't say, which is malarkey. There was this guy on Facebook who I'm friends with, and I unfriended him because of this and for many other stupid things he said. And not that I say really smart things, but the guy goes, well, I had to enroll on Obamacare today. This is on March 31st. And you know what? Obama's a jerk, and this is a nightmare. This reminds me of a guy who waits to the very last second to do his paper and then gets all mad at the teacher for having him write a paper. The teacher told you months and months ago to write the dang paper. And now you're getting around to it, and now you're going to blame take some responsibility. And that's the thing that a lot of conservatives yell all the time is people need to take responsibility for their actions, which I agree with up to a point, but why aren't they taking responsibility for not doing their enrollment? And what are you doing walking around with no insurance anyway, you idiot? I don't know, maybe you're a smart person and not an idiot, just an idiot in this area. That's okay. That's part of the human condition. I have no problems if you're that or chromosexual. I think that's wonderful. Chromosomosexual. Now that would be really interesting. Please email me. We need to do an interview sometime. So yes, the cool Into an Interview, the finale with Ed Roman is coming up, but right now somebody's walking in. Hello to you.
Hello, Michael Masters. This is Madame Rootabega, and I am a chromosomosexual.
Really? So what does that mean exactly? Who do you date?
Well, Michael Masters, I am a heterochromosomosexual, so it has to be someone with different chromosomes than me.
So you're not a same chromosome homosexual.
No, Michael Masters.
I'm so confused right now, I want to cry.
That's okay. You can put your head on my shoulder, and I might be a little bit aroused.
Oh, what? Never mind. Don't confirm what I thought I just heard. Look, Welch just walked in.
Oh, there, Mike. This is Valentino, the parking attendant.
And this is Bison Bentley. Do you know that?
Mike, we think all of this Obamacare stuff is lies, lies, lies. We much prefer the Tea Party's healthcare system. It's called Nobody Get Care System D.
Yeah, nobody needs care. They can fend for themselves. Like that guy that chopped his own hand off in England. Do you know that?
Oh my gosh, I heard that story on the BBC. Because I listen to the BBC because I'm a snob. No, it's fascinating. When you listen to podcasts, you can listen to podcasts from anywhere all around the world and get news that you will never hear in America. I don't know, maybe this did get played in America, but there was a guy who was having problems with his hand, so he cut it off. And that, well, I don't know if that says anything about the British healthcare system, and they are definitely more government run than we are. So I don't know, maybe this is a problem that can't be solved by any healthcare system.
Mike, I don't feel so good after that story there.
Yeah, I really treasure my hand now, Mike. Do you know that? Oh my God, what's that?
It's your hand.
Oh, that's what that is. Eee.
Bison Bentley, I often wonder about you.
What do you wonder about?
I wonder if you're a Frozen fan, because the Frozen soundtrack... Okay, I want to read this from Vulture.com. This is so funny how they wrote this. The Frozen soundtrack notches its 8th number one on the Billboard 200 this week, making it the longest-running non-consecutive number one since Adele's 21. For context, Adele... We should have had it all. Spent 24 weeks at number one. 24 weeks at number one. So Frozen has a long way to go, but also kids lose all the time, it says. And they really love singing Let It Go. How many copies will your child buy? Very funny, Vulture. So what do you think about that, about Frozen? Did you like the music from that? Did you like how John Travolta butchered the singer's name? Adina Medina? Hey, you don't have to be a Scientologist to mispronounce names. And, you know, John Travolta is dyslexic, and we're going to talk about dyslexia, Ed Roman and I. Very fascinating what he has to say about it. That's coming up in just a moment on Into an Interview. What do you think about all that? Email me, MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. We read your comments on the section Emails from Email. Also email me there if you'd like to be a guest on the show or if you'd like to sponsor the show. We would love to have you as a sponsor. MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. What would that sound like if you were sponsoring the show? I would say, hey, and insert your name here, is great, and I fully support them. It sounds something like that, only a little bit longer. And there's the website, MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. Go there to sign up for the what we call iTunes. You can subscribe to the show in iTunes, and that means when I post a new show, you'll get the show downloaded, and you can catch them all as I make them daily. There is also the link to the Facebook page. And if you like the Facebook page, what happens is when you get one of my posts for the new show, because I always post a new show there on Facebook too, you can share that with your friends and more people find out about Mike's Daily Podcast. There's also a link to where to find us on Yelp. You can Yelp about us because we're delicious. Just like that restaurant down the street that serves delicious Chinese food that's probably a little bit too old. It shouldn't be sitting out that long in those little heat trays. Then there's also links to where to catch us on Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, Spreaker, Stitcher, and yes, the Amazon deal of the day. Click on that and buy something at a discount, and that helps support the show too. There's also the blog and the daily podcast picture at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com.
Into an interview.
I'm speaking with the amazing singer-songwriter, intellectual, Ed Roman.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
And I'm doing well. Are you in Ontario now?
We are, yes.
Okay, and
We're just, if you know, obviously people know Toronto because of all the wonderful political banter that's been going on about the mayor there, and I don't want to get into that. But the reality of it is that we're north of there by about an hour and a half in a small community called Melanchthon, and just a little town called Shelburne. So it's a big farming community. Lots of family farms that have been operating up here in this area for over 150 years. And we just went through a very large public battle against what was happening up here with, I don't know if you knew, but the aggregate company that was interested in all the limestone underneath the area, because this particular part of Ontario, just like out towards Prince Edward Island, has what is known as loamy soil. And that means it's really great for drainage. So in times of drought, it holds water well because it has a certain amount of sand content.
Oh.
And in drought times, because of the limestone and the sand, it also is porous, so it doesn't allow the water to stand. So it's ideal for root crops and corn and, you know, multitudes of kinds of vegetables. So there was an aggregate company that was really interested in building the largest strip mine pit here in Ontario, and if not North America for that matter. And it would have been twice the depth of Niagara Falls, below the water table, and would have greatly affected millions of people in the aqueduct, the viaduct that goes down through this area down into Lake Ontario and feeds numerous towns, including a greater part of the greater metropolitan Toronto area. So the community up here banded together and they created something which was known as food stock. And we got 30,000 people in a farmer's field, in a forest, and artists and musicians and poets and dancers and chefs. 100 different chefs from across the country of Canada came to support the event. And because of it, we basically kiboshed the whole project. But the whole thing is that the public will always keep an eye on what's going on, because there still may be things happening behind the scenes that we know nothing about, but just that this is kind of what we've been dealing with up here on that level.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And like to see that, like cars, just piles of cars in this field, and nobody cared. It was fall, it was rainy a little bit, some sunshine, it was kind of damp, but people bared it out, walking around in the mud. It was like literally like stuff that happened at Woodstock.
Yeah.
And people just had such a wonderful time. But the community came and supported it. As far as Toronto, there were lineups of cars that went down a major highway for over 10 miles. And you couldn't even get to the site. You had to walk there or be shuttled in.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was wild.
Well, now, I read that, is this true that Nixon liked your mom's home-cooked potatoes? That's on your bio somewhere.
You know what? My mom never met Richard Nixon, and I'm sure she probably never cared to. But once again, just because of what my uncle and his sort of political background was, Brian Mulroney, Nixon, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the Pope, a number of people were associated with my sort of uncle's background, just because, as I said, he was an international figure and a figurehead in the iron ore companies in this country. And once again, we're back to the garden, Mike. My family shared vegetables with a family down the road, so inevitability, my mom's potatoes ended up one night on the dinner table when Nixon was dining with my uncle.
Ah!
And he had commented, Mr. Nixon, on, "These are fresh potatoes. I know a fresh potato when I see one, and when I taste it."
Wow, okay. That's amazing. Now,
apparently, that's the story. That's the family allegory, and I'm sticking with it.
And an excellent impression of Nixon.
Thank you.
And then, okay, you have a bass that you restored from the Battle of, is it Vimy Ridge?
Oh, that would be Vimy Ridge.
Vimy Ridge.
It's not. I didn't actually restore it. This is another project that I'm really wanting to get off the ground, and I've been writing script and one-pagers and all sorts of stuff for it. But the instrument is a 250-year-old instrument that was made in Bohemia, so it was before the actual Czech Republic was formed. I'm actually from Slovakia, which is in the south. So you had Moravia in the north, Bohemia in the middle, and Slovakia was the southern sort of country state. And the instrument somehow became either a spoil of war during the First World War, or it ended up as part of the Canadian infantry band instrument detail menagerie of things, whether they've been horns or instruments and stuff like that the soldiers would have to either play in the military bands or use to, set up a little cantina and play in a little tent somewhere to entertain each other at night. So what was wild is that they took the time to actually inscribe the battles that the base was at. So all the First World War battles, some heavy stuff like Selmer, Le Poucats, and like, as you mentioned, Vimy Ridge is one of the locations that this particular instrument was at.
Huh.
And not to mention a countless amount of Belgian and French towns that it had passed through. And then on the second side of the bass, on the rib, because it's not on the front or the back, on the face or the back, is the names of the guys that were actually playing the instrument at the time. So, I've done some work through the Dufferin County Museum and Archives that's up here, and they are sort of the caretakers of some of those accession papers that guys would have either filled out before they joined the military. And I'm trying to do a sort of a documentative look at looking back from now and tracing the history of the bass back 250 years to the actual instrument maker, and to try to take the bass and talk to the family, say, like if there's grandparents or great-grandparents that they may have had, is there any stories they remember? Uh-huh. And then I coincidentally, there's a gentleman that's up in this neck of the woods. He was telling me a story about his father-in-law who was in the First World War in the Canadian Division, and he said he had to carry this bass around with him everywhere he went. And I still have to talk to this gentleman, but for all I know, there could be a connection point between, this bass and that story. So the idea is it's going to be called "If This Bass Could Only Talk," and to sort of travel back in time to those moments and to take the bass back to Europe, go to Vimy, go to those places in Belgium, and retrace its steps. And see what happens when you set out to make a documentary or something like that. There's a lot of amazing little things that sort of come up, and even you might set out to think you're making a documentary about something, it could turn into something even more wonderful than you'd expected. So there's be some music that'll be written for it, and I just really want to tell this story because it's such an interesting instrument. I've never seen anything like it before, and just the sheer fact that it's playable still.
Yeah.
And usable. There's a spot on it where at one time the story goes it was hit by a bullet. Huh. It was reconstructed. You can see all the fingerings of the wood in the bottom half of the rib where it was like re-glued and put back together again.
Wow. That is a neat, that's a great idea, Ed. Now, what advice can you give to people that have dyslexia that may struggle with it? Do you have any advice for?
Absolutely. I would look at it as a gift. I think that dyslexia is something like a lot of things that we have today, which really have to do with comprehension. Dyslexia is a thing that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is stupid. And when I grew up in the 70s as a kid with the problem, some teachers, they maybe weren't as eloquent as some could be about how to deal with the problem. Mm-hmm. So dyslexia also goes hand in hand with self-esteem issues. And when you re-amplify a self-esteem issue, that's not good. It's not going to help the situation any. The thing about dyslexia, what I've learned over many years of dealing with it, is that most dyslexics have the ability to look outside of a perspective, and in a way that's not an advantage, but just different. And because of that, it doesn't always fit into the expected cookie cutter system of the education system. And that's, we could go on a topic about, because I've been a teacher for a number of years, the things that need to be adjusted in the education system. I don't want to use the word fixed, because adjusted is what needs to happen. People learn at different speeds. They obtain information differently. The way they withhold information is different. But dyslexics are one of those kind of people that sort of think outside of the box. And we actually need those kind of people to sort of look at things in a little different way. So what I would say to dyslexics that are struggling with it, look to the things that you love to do and amplify them.
Amplify them.
Amplify them. If you love to write, write. If you love to dance, dance. If you love to cook, cook. Nobody's like this thing about people being, superstars and being stars. Like, what is that? Like, what makes a person a star or gratified in their community for what they do? Is it the skills that they have with their hands? Or is it because of how many people like them because of the way they look, or, what sexual culture they decide to spew of that day? And I think there's a lot of this kind of, that's systemic in society, where it's like we should be looking towards people in our own communities as superstars, as opposed to always just looking at, the person that's on a huge stage with lasers hitting them. and I think that's an important thing. I saw this amazing thing of this old man in Romania, and he basically begs for money all day. And most people who get begged for money probably think, yeah, he's just a bum and da-da-da-da-da. But when you follow the little story, you find out that at the end of the day, this man gives his money away to children that don't have a home. And he lives in this little hovel. He doesn't keep the money for himself. He just gives it away.
Wow.
So those people are everywhere. But we're inundated with this presence of like, so greater than that you're this majestical sort of icon. It's so unhealthy, and it's right in front of us every day, on a bus, on a street corner. It could be in a local pub. It could be in a supermarket, in a conversation that you have with somebody, and it makes life so much more rich and more valuable, because you're part of it then. You're not just a spectator or somebody wishing to be like that.
Tell me about your Baba.
My Yoda Baba?
Yeah.
She was the Yoda of our family.
You sound like a Yoda. You're full of wisdom.
Maybe I'm fortunate that I grew up at a time when all families sort of, or maybe my family more so from that Eastern European background, kind of all lived together. It was difficult, but there's something really valid about having 3 generations of people all living in one space. And the old teach so much on a moralistic level to kids, as opposed to separating them and putting them in a home. And, I mean, it gets difficult. With Baba, it was like she was 96 when she passed away. But those last couple of years were very difficult, and it made it very difficult to look after her. And when it came to that point, it was something that she accepted, but, being there, even when she was in a home at that point, I saw people that were in their 50s and 60s that were in homes, and I thought, I understand people have busy lives, but that's a sacrifice that people make sometimes for family and friends. And I think that comes down to love and respect. So, Baba was like not only a grandmother to me, but like to tons of kids that were even in our neighborhood, or my dad's friends, or, how many times I hear people go, oh, you remember your Baba would do this? Or she would kiss me and hug me, or we'd come over and she'd make donuts, or she'd say something like, dear, I'm not two-faced. You don't be two-faced. You always got to be truthful. Those little things at a young age are extremely impressionable for a young kid. when they're outside of their normal realm and, family life, and they're exposed to somebody else, even in their own community, that's that way. So she was a really neat lady, and a lot of my family are that way because we were exposed to her. So it's one of those things, again, that becomes kinetic. Mm-hmm. It's shared from generation to generation, and it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Wow, that's cool. And then I wanted to shift here and talk about your music. And do you have 2 bass players in your band?
Well, many years ago, when we had the band that we were working with, and it was called Special Ed and the Musically Challenged, and the title existed just because I was my pseudo play on my special education years as a dyslexic. But there was 2 bass players in the band, and wow. I thought it created a really interesting sound. But I'm not opposed to having 2 basses on a track, one playing something that's fundamental and something else that's melodic or even chordal. That's the thing about it. That just breaking out of that boundary again and thinking about things in a different perspective and working at it to kind of get it to that level. It just doesn't come. It takes a lot of work and thinking and feeling as you kind of go through the process. But I've always gravitated to the bass. There's something on that low subsonic frequency of things that really stirs me. It's almost like a meditative om or something, Yeah. And then, I don't know if you knew about the new documentary that's coming out about Jaco Pastorius, but he was one of those kinds of people, too, that really broke those boundaries and was a huge influence on me as a young kid. And fortunate enough to have somebody that wasn't even a music teacher at my own school hand me a bunch of his records, and it basically I went, what is this? Uh-huh. This is the bass. He's got overdrive on it. Like, this is incredible. He was like, I was just hooked the first time I heard it.
What's the recording process like when you're putting together stuff?
I never put a boundary on anything, and I never try to put a blueprint on stuff. I find the creative process at first comes through inspiration and following that inspiration, so long as you do it, and whether it's lyrical or melodic. And then it begins to go through a developmental state where it's like you're rolling around the ideas in your head and you're sort of fine-tuning things. And then when it gets to the recording stage, all of what you've worked on to that point starts to show itself as to the procedure. So, for instance, like if I've recorded, or I'm thinking about a jazz piece, for me, a live off-the-floor recording is essential. I need to have real guys or women, whoever it is, there to perform and do it in a symbiotic way. Uh-huh. Because there's so much feeding that goes hand in hand with everything. It goes, and it's so hard to capture that improvisational moment when people, aren't in the room and you got to take it later. It's not contrived, but it just doesn't have that same mojo. Mm. And then when you're recording something that's more of a constructed tune, usually, it's funny, I usually start with like an acoustic guitar and my voice, and I build around that. And there's, I may start with a bass next or start playing some drums, but it all kind of seems to be like one of those things where you're walking to a forest and you see a little path, and as you walk, you take the path, and you can see, you could take this route, and there's a creek there, kind of a thing. It just shows itself, provided that you follow it the right way. And sometimes in the studio, things can get forced and contrived, and other things in the past, if I've been a guest musician or something like that, and there's a time constraint, or, the charts have to be this way, and, I understand. But then it also kind of comes off in a weird way, because whether you believe it or not, the reality is that you're creating an electrical moment. You're conveying this thing that you're capturing on a tape. Mm-hmm. And just like a good conversation or the relationships you have with people, it's the same thing. They sort of manifest and can be felt and heard sort of the same way. It's like when you hear that recording, you get those you see, I heard that tune, I get the chills up my back. It's the same thing. It's because there's something special about that. Even in its imperfection, you find those things without it having to be overly quantized and cut and paste to a point that it's like, I've got recordings of old tunes that you can tell they speed up a little bit, but from the beginning to the end of the tune, I don't care. The point is that it feels right.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, now your past albums were Are You Okay, Uncle Ed's Farm, and now it's Letters from High Latitudes. And let's listen to the song World Keeps on Turning. Can you tell me about this one?
Sure, and I think you mentioned Oracles and Ice Cream, did you?
Oh, no, I didn't. I missed that one. Sorry. Oracles and Ice Cream.
Yeah, that was the last 22-song CD that I put out about 3 years ago.
22 songs?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of material over a bunch of years because, music finds its way into the right places at the right moments in time, and I just thought all this stuff kind of fits together, and I really want to put it out there. The last record that we're talking about now, Letters from High Latitudes, is 13 songs.
Okay.
But it doesn't make it any less or different in any way. It's just, it seemed to be right at the time, and a lot of it fit. There's a lot of acoustic music on that last record, and it all worked together somehow. But the tune that you're talking about, I believe you're talking about World Keeps on Turning.
Yeah.
The World Keeps on Turning came from, it was right around, believe it or not, I guess I was with one of my nephews, and we were standing around a campfire. And he's much younger than I am, and, adults as they are, we get sort of caught up in our ways of thinking, and we were talking about life, and he's much, much younger, and, the stars and the planets and how, the Earth, revolves around the sun. And he just came out with this statement. He just went, "Yeah, I can't believe I'm alive sometimes." And I went, whew. It like a slap across the face. I was hit, and I can remember as a young kid having that thought and how separated I was from it at that moment in time. So the song sort of relevates around those feelings that we have that either punctuate the moment or in essence help us get through the moment. There's a story and a line in the song where the Kalahari Bushmen in Africa, they always say, you have to keep the bad memories below your knees so you can walk around. And the idea is that you can step over them. They don't invade your chest so you can't breathe. They don't invade your heart so you can't feel. They don't invade your speech or your mind so you can't think clearly. So it's one of those stepping stone songs to try to get it, and the realization that no matter what happens, the world's going to keep on turning.
Wow.
So think about it in a positive way. Things are going to keep evolving and moving and changing. It might not be right now, but there's a reason for things happening at that moment in time. Somebody once said to me, if you're uncomfortable, you're learning something. So that's where kind of it all came about.
Amazing. And I'm going to keep bad memories below my knees. Just keep them down there. That's a great...
Do it.
Wow, I've learned so much today about your family, about bass guitars from World War I, and the Nixon's potato and Pope John Paul II. Oh my gosh, I've learned a lot today. That's not even the tip of the iceberg.
Me too, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and it's just. So you said you're in the Bay Area?
Yeah, we're in Castro Valley, which is close to San Francisco, and we're next to Oakland.
I'd love to get out to that neck of the woods one day. I have a cousin that's down in Los Angeles. She lives in that neck of the woods in Burbank, I believe. And I've always wanted to. I was out in Seattle and Westport and Oregon and a bunch of those places, but I never made it that far, and I just love that area.
Oh, yeah, and we're getting rain right now. A bunch of rain.
Oh, better than snow.
No snow, yeah. But you could probably go on for a while and tell us some helpful snow tips. But that'll be the next show.
That'll be the next show.
Next show, we could talk about snow. But
we'll sing Frosty or something.
Yeah. And, we talked about coffee, too. I learned a lot about coffee.
Oh, coffee. Yeah. Oh, yeah, coffee.
We covered a lot of topics. And bulls, blonde aquitaines. But the name of your album is Letters from High Latitudes.
That is right.
And you can find it at edroman.net, and it's on Amazon, iTunes, and all that stuff.
All that. It's like there's 50 majors that are out there. And just search my name, put it Ed Roman in the search window, and you will see it pop up.
And here he is with World Keeps On Turning on Mike's Daily Podcast.
The world keeps on turning round. The world keeps on turning round. But I'm always falling down. But I've got my heart to the ground. Just like the big wheels on the 235. Standing around a fire, yelling glad to be alive. Alive! And all my tall green friends, they be hanging around. There's a warrant out for you boys, they're coming to lay all you down. Keep all your bad memories below the knees, so you can walk around. Then I hear the world that's turning round. The world keeps on turning round. The world keeps on turning round. But I'm always falling down. But I've got my heart to the ground. Maybe a good swift kick in the push is all that we need. Nothing comes from the grounds without planting some seed. I pick up my axe, I heed the call. I can't stand to seem to bear the weight of it all. Keep all the bad memories below the knees, so you can walk around. I hear the world that's turning round. The world keeps on turning round. The world keeps on turning round. But I'm always falling down. But I've got my heart to the ground. The world keeps on turning round. The world keeps on turning round. But I'm always falling down, but I've got my heart to the ground. Oh, well, you gotta believe me, mirrors ain't nothing but shadows falling in. Deceive me, the world's gonna keep on spinning round, spinning round and round and round, spinning round, spinning round and round and sang to me as the plane of people flew away. Seems like it could have happened on any other day. And when the fire's out, will it all still be here, my dear? Don't think it's anything you can measure up into years. Keep all the bad memories below the knees, so you can walk around. And I hear the world that's turning round. The world keeps on turning round. The world keeps on turning round. But I'm always falling down. But I've got my heart to the ground. The world keeps on turning round. The world keeps on turning
world keeps on turning as we go outside the last place on earth where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valley, California.
And here's today's podcast picture.
The picture was from a trip I took to Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is when I lived in Huntsville, Alabama back in 2009. My ex-wife and I went there. We stayed the night there. It was quite nice. I'm trying to remember the hotel. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, the hotel maybe wasn't that nice, but we would walk around Chattanooga and check out all the stuff down there. It's an interesting old town. And this is actually a bridge that is now a pedestrian-only bridge that goes over the Tennessee River. Which, by the way, the Tennessee River also goes by Huntsville, Alabama, which is kind of weird. I need to look at a map how that works out. Because that seems a bit odd. But all kinds of things at Chattanooga, Tennessee, including you could see Rock City there, which we did not go see Rock City. The Chattanooga Choo Choo's there, we saw that. It's actually like a hotel now. And it is beautiful to walk over the Tennessee River, and they got some cool, like old-timey buildings and places you can get a coffee. It actually feels kind of like the Bay Area in this one little section of Chattanooga that you can see in the picture, and you can see the cool old bridge too at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST-.com.
Michael Matthew, I want to tell you that I went to Chattanooga one time because I met somebody on OkCupid.
You did. How did that date go?
It went very well.
Wow, that's better than any date that I've had on OkCupid.
How many have you had?
One. Kind of. It was a conversation. It wasn't a date. But it lasted 2 hours.
Vow, Michael Matthew, vow.
Yes, vow. Tomorrow we will bring you the return of the much-loved feature called The Bottom of the Charts. And we will tackle a year that's fairly recent. We'll also hear from Chely Shoehart, Floyd the Floorman, and John Deere the engineer.
Mike, I want to tell you right now, Dave, that I'm getting a little bit leery of the Tea Parties, Dave.
Really? Why is that?
Because they all seem like they're really high on some kind of a substance that they're not giving me any of, Dave.
Perhaps it's tea. Maybe it's a type of tea that they're steeping, and it's making them interestingly heightened in some sort of way that the rest of the people that follow politics go, that makes no sense at all.
Mike, I will never say at all, ever, Dave.
Yeah, we don't talk like British people. Do you know that?
Once again with the British people, they talk normal when you're in England. Okay, here we kind of have a little issue, have a little difficulty understanding Doctor Who, but it's nothing that you can't rise above by putting on the CC, closed captioning.
So you say, Dave.
Yeah, so I did say. There, you know, we need closed captioning for you, Valentino.
Nobody puts baby in a closed caption.
Huh?
Dirty Dancing, Dave.
How dare you?
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. Email Mike now at MIKES-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Let it go! Watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Stay